Hey everybody, welcome back to Vegas Weekly for Saturday, September the 10th. Yeah, that's right, September the 10th, 2022. Today's show may be a little longer than usual and maybe redundant for some of you, but I'm almost doing it in part for myself to try to get a good sort of recap of what went on Vegas 50. Before I get started, did want to thank all the folks that supported the vlog this past week. As you know, we're probably not going to do it quite like that in the future, but by and large we had good response, good comments, views were up. We've got a number of new subscribers over the past few weeks, and I want to welcome any of you who are watching. If you're not too familiar with the show, we do this about once a week, talk about Vegas in some form or other. Maybe show you some things in Vegas. It just kind of varies from time to time. The studio, the famous bookshelf behind me, will probably be going away soon, as there's going to be some changes made in my living arrangements. So after the last couple of days in Las Vegas, I returned home yesterday in a state pretty much of exhaustion. Thankfully, my lovely wife picked me up at the airport, and so I did not have to drive myself back, but it was still a very long day. I napped a little bit during the day, but I wanted to spend some time reconnecting with her as well, so I didn't really get to sleep until the wee hours. Still very, very much wrecked. Used a personal day at work today because I just don't think I would have been worth a damn, to be honest, and yeah, I guess that's kind of what they're for. But so I kind of extended my vacation, but not in a way that's particularly pleasant. But I am finally back in the regular studio because she had to work all night and is currently trying to sleep because she has to work all of tonight as well. I think one of the reasons that the vlog was somewhat more successful this time around was we did a little bit better job of actually capturing what was going on throughout the day. I will say that there's some gaps in there, and I'll try to cover some of those at least briefly. And a lot of it was due to the fact that the phone battery would die at a place where it simply wasn't convenient for me to return back to the room and recharge it. And I think that happened downtown on both occasions, and maybe somewhere else, probably even Mark Timber. So there's footage that could have been there, would have been there, but as I say, and I think I mentioned that I have one of those little portable chargers, but of course I didn't bring it. I also didn't really use the new little handheld tripod more than a couple of times. It worked okay, but I just don't, unlike some people, I'm just not really comfortable just carrying around my phone on a little tripod all the time. I guess, like I said, in the Day 7 wrap-up, I'm just not a very good vlogger, but most of you already know that. So, but I did want to kind of recap what happened. Also wanted to thank several people, particularly, and if I left you out, please do call me on it, because I want you to. First night we got in town, we met up with a gentleman by the name of Matt, and his last name escapes me, but he says he watches the show, so if you do, comment down below so I can remember your last name. Bought us a drink up at Excalibur. The Keno Kid and Candy were incredibly generous with their time and resources. Got the bottle of Tito's for the second year in a row, and you know, guys, bill me if you want for the ticket to the Shania Twain concert, because I never ended up paying you. But for the moment, I'm considering that a gift. If nothing else, I'm going to pay you guys back someday. Of course, to Mark and Liz in particular, Mark, who spent so much time with me on this trip, and we didn't tear each other's eyes out. So one of my very best friends, and you'll be happy to know that they are back home safely after a very, very long day yesterday. Lee, our good friend from Kansas, it was so good to see him today after a couple of years. He was kind enough to share his Diamond Celebration meal with Mark and I at Guy Fieri's. Gave me a chance to check that place out. Finally, it was very good, so thanks to Lee. Gotta give a special shout out to one of my favorite subscribers, members, person that's been so supportive of the channel over the past several years, Diana Allen and her husband Gord. Got a chance to spend a couple hours with them playing some Keno, and they gave me a bottle of this sort of, I don't know, buttered rum, whiskey stuff, which I tried last night, and it tastes like butterscotch. It tastes way too good, so they brought that to me all the way from Canada, so thanks to them for that. I'm pretty sure along the way there were many other people that bought me a drink. I know Ashley Diane ended up giving me a beer at the Legends concert as well. Ace of Vegas, we missed you. We really missed you, buddy, but it was very kind of you to Venmo us some cash to help cover the tab at the Golden Tiki. And yeah, I'm totally going to be missing people. There were so many people that I met on this trip and met for the very first time. So we're going to go ahead, so this thing isn't like 85 minutes long, and start with the recap here right after this. Okay, I'm going to try to do this in more or less one take, and I'm sure I'm going to forget things. Literally, I was in the shower a few hours ago just trying to practice this thing, and I get back out, and Caitlin is like, who were you talking to in the shower? And I was like, well, I was kind of trying to practice for this little recap thing. Okay, so day zero, you saw quite a bit of day zero. A lot of people tuned into our live stream that night at Excalibur. I didn't fly out of Kansas City. The flight didn't leave till almost 10 o'clock, I guess, that night. Had a lot of time to hang out in the airport. Ended up drinking 2 airport beers. So I get on the plane. I only had, it's Southwest, I had boarding position B30 or something. Usually I always try for a window seat. I found one literally in the back row of the plane on the left-hand side. The plane supposedly was 100% full, but the only other person in that row was a lady that was sitting on the aisle. So once again, I hit the jackpot on a Vegas trip, and I had the seat next to me emptied. Also ordered a couple of drinks on the flight. I was never charged for them. So I mentioned Vegas tipper trick. That does sometimes happen. So we get to Vegas, pretty quickly got my luggage, pretty quickly got a lift. I can't remember how much it was. It was a little bit pricier. I thought the lifts on this trip all were much pricier than certainly would have been the case, a couple of years ago. Probably that's a result of the increase in gas prices, but definitely worth looking at Lyft and Uber and thinking about a cab because they become very competitive. I had been chatting with Mark all day, Pennies for Vegas. From now on, we'll just call him Mark. And we talked about meeting up. Mark had a ridiculously long day on August 31st. I think he got up around 5 a.m. and met up with a dozen different people. I think went to a WNBA game, and I was very jealous because I wanted to check that out as well. Go Aces. They were in the finals. But also went to a My Vegas event that looked really fun. But we had planned to meet up at some point, Excalibur, Luxor, or something, after I got into town. And almost as soon as I got to the check-in area, Penny's was there. So we went up to the room. That's where we did the live stream that so many of you participated in. We had a lot of fun doing that. Went back down to the casino. That's where we met Matt and ran into the one and only Daniel Ocean. Daniel, hope you are feeling well. Daniel's been a little under the weather since getting back into his life. And we hung out with them. We didn't really play much at Excalibur, to be honest. At one point, pretty much everybody called it a night, but I just had to walk over to Luxor and spend just a little time playing at the bar there. I hadn't played at all. Ended up at Circa because it was open, but it was only open for about another 20 minutes. But I did play a little bit of, I don't know whether I played VP or Keno, I can't really remember, but did get a couple of beers out of that. After that, I called it a night because I knew had a fairly big day ahead of me, though it actually didn't turn out to be that big. So I scheduled to meet up with Mark that morning of basically day one. We had planned to do a breakfast buffet. We went back and forth between Excalibur and Luxor. I finally suggested we do it at Luxor because he had already moved over and checked his bags at Mandalay Bay, so it was kind of halfway. That was probably a mistake. I'd eaten at the Luxor buffet in March and thought it was pretty good. I mean, it was decent at least. It was barely edible on this trip. Yeah, I mean, if you got the My Vegas reward, it's like $15. You could probably find $15 worth of edible food there. About half of what I had was okay. Mark had an omelet that looked like it had sprung a leak somewhere along the way, and it really put him off the rest of it. But thanks to him for paying for that. Who knew that Pennies for Vegas paid for things? But yeah, after that, myself, Mark, Lee actually as well, we're checking into Mandalay Bay that day. All the cool kids at some point were at Mandalay Bay. We ran into the slot gypsies there a couple of times. It was still pretty early. We went ahead and walked over there, and we were able to check in. I checked out the room briefly, but I had checked my bags over at Excalibur, so I needed to make my way back there to get those. Along the way there at Mandalay Place, I did run into Lee. We exchanged greetings very briefly. Had to stop, of course, at Luxor and at the Play Bar, where I played 4-card Keno for a while, and had, I don't know, 4 or 5 beers in an hour and a half or so. But did finally make my way over to Luxor, picked up my bags, and was like, what's the best way to get over there? And in this case, I thought it probably was the tram that I have occasionally disparaged. So, and that worked out pretty well. I got my bags up to the room at Mandalay Bay, and eventually got a message from Mark that he was down at one of the casino bars there playing the $100 My Vegas reward, which fortunately we had both been able to book this trip because we actually had to pay for 3 nights at Mandalay Bay over Labor Day weekend. Once I got down there, ran into him, we ran into Lee, and we hung out there for quite a while until we both all 3 of us kind of got hungry. Lee was like, I have a $100 diamond celebration meal, so maybe we could all go to a Caesars property, which of course was nowhere near there. I eventually decided on Guy Fieri's, as I mentioned, Ubered up there. We all had wings, a couple of appetizers. It was solid. I mean, it's expensive, but it's pretty good. So if you've always been wanting to check it out, as I kind of did, there you go. And then eventually we made it back to Mandalay Bay. We played at the Rhythm and Riffs bar for a little while. And then I think we all kind of ran out of gas. So the day that I thought was going to be this really huge day ended up being a fairly short one. But there were many long ones to come. Okay, so once again got up and around pretty early on day 2. A lot of this is recorded. Met up with Mark about 10 o'clock after finishing my vlog. He suggested we immediately head downtown. We had planned to do essentially a pub crawl, casino crawl thing, and try to get a beer at all the properties that we ran into downtown. I did it a few years ago, right before COVID. Back then, Circa was not open. Well, maybe it was kind of during COVID. Circa wasn't open. Well, the Main Street Station was open. So it was a little more challenging this time, particularly when you start out with an 8% IPA at Main Street Station. But we pulled it off. Along the way, we stopped at Pizza Rock, and it was so good. If you've never actually eaten inside the joint, or never tried the meatballs, which are spectacular, definitely do so. We ordered a whole pizza, just a cheese pizza. It was delicious. It was in the vlog, so I won't go on and on about it. But I think that kind of helped us get a second wind, and we were able to finish it up. We ran into the Kenos, who had gotten into town that day. I don't know, somewhere maybe around Binion's, I think. Not really sure. So they joined us for a while, and then were kind enough to give us a ride back to Mandalay Bay, where they had also checked in, because that's where all the kids hung out. I can't really recall if we had made any particular plans to meet up again after we got back to the casino. We probably did, but it had been a long day. And I went back up to the room and crashed for a few hours. But then I wake up at like 2, 3 in the morning. So I'm like, well, let's go check things out. It's Friday night, Mandalay Bay. I get downstairs. I hit up the same casino bar that we had played at the previous afternoon, and met up with a bartender that I would meet up again with on Saturday and Sunday, Mark, who probably won't ever see this, but one of his best friends owns a bar about 2 miles from where I live. So we had a little bit of connection there. He was very generous, a good guy. I basically sat there and played 4-card Keno for a while, and then I noticed over to my right someone that looked kind of familiar, but I wasn't really sure. And then that same person hits a hand pay and turns around and faces in my direction, and it's Jackie of the Slot Gypsies, who great person, except she wins too goddamn much. She wins too much. So she had hit a hand pay there at the same bar at like, what, 4 in the morning. But, so that was pretty cool, and after that, I called it a night. Okay, so the show is getting way too long, so we'll try to work through the rest of this as quickly as we can. The Kenos were generous enough to have offered to buy Mark and I breakfast on that morning. And we went to Citizens at Mandalay Bay, which was convenient. It was pretty good. I didn't love what I had. They always kind of put kind of a twist on it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We also all ended up at the Play Bar at Luxor for a while that day, and they tried to kill us. So we all needed to take a little break after a bunch of crazy shots. And then we went to Shania Twain, and that was great. Up at Planet Hollywood. The bad part about that trip was the trip back. It was so busy that Saturday night that between retrieving the valet, turning it in again, and then trying to get some late night food, which we ended up doing at Re-Raw, it was a long day. Re-Raw seemed like a cool place. We got there just before they started serving food, and I ordered these little chicken bites, and I thought I'd get them hot, because how hot can hot be? Well, hot enough to burn all the way through you, which everyone else at the table who tried them agreed with. So if you decide to do that, don't get the wild sauce, because it was a little too wild, at least for me. I should have entirely called it a night at this point. I almost did. I a couple of times on this trip, I did the little deal they have at the gift shops there and got like 2 beers and a shot. It ends up costing you like $20. But it was so busy at Mandalay Bay that were literally like no bars open. The place was just packed. People like vomiting in like trash cans, dogs pooping on the floor. It was kind of crazy. So I went up to the room. I still ended up coming down for a little bit. A little bit later, ran into my favorite bartender once again, Mark. And so, but I didn't stay up quite as late that night. Okay, so as I was afraid of, this is getting way too long, so we're going to try to wrap up the first 4 days in a fairly short period of time, and there's a lot of video evidence of both. The 4th was moving day for Mark. Liz arrived in town, so that was cool. They ended up heading over to Planet Hollywood. I still had one more day at Mandalay Bay. Ended up meeting up with the Kenos again, and once again at the Play Bar at Luxor, and once again a bartender tried to kill us. But, you know, that happens sometimes. But otherwise, the 4th was fairly nondescript. I don't remember a whole lot of big events going on. But that was certainly not the case on the 5th. The 5th was Mark Timber. It was also the day that I would move over to Planet Hollywood for the last 3 nights of my trip. Once again, the Kenos were kind enough to take me over there, and we hung out there for quite a while. Also with Ashley Diane and her husband, playing some Keno there at the Keno Run, I'll call it, at Planet Hollywood, and had a good time with that. And then it was time to head over to Mark Timber. I can't remember for sure. I thought we Ubered over there because I think everybody wanted to have a few drinks. It worked out fine. A lot of people there. A lot of people who got into town on the 4th and the 5th. Cinnamon Girl, Tom and Mindy. Got to see all of the Slot Gypsies that night. Got to meet up with Vital Vegas very briefly. Got to see Ronnie C. Bonnie. It was great meeting all those folks. And I'm sure, as always, that I'm leaving somebody out. Always a good time there at the front yard, whatever they call it there. I don't know. I think I just had a few. I think I had a flight of beers or something, and probably nibbled on some other people's appetizers. But it was a good time. VBI was also there. I hadn't seen Gord in quite some time, So we also did a little group pull at Cosmo that night and did okay. Thanks to Mark and Liz, and then who was the other person that actually did something when they played? The rest of us, not so much. But yeah, it was a decent night, and I kept all my shoes this time. Okay, so the 6th, my actual birthday, I guess, was highlighted by about 3 sort of events, and then a really lost evening after all of that. Ended up spending some time with Diana and Gord, who I mentioned earlier, playing some Keno at Planet Hollywood. It was great getting to know them. Just a really relaxing kind of kickback, a couple of hours there. And then made my way over to the Golden Tiki. And that was the site of a Big Elvis event. But unfortunately, we were all sitting so far away from Big Elvis while we were there that we really didn't see much, although you could hear him perform. But yeah, so we had several people there. And then we made our way downtown. That had kind of been the plan all along, to head back downtown on the 6th after a few more people arrived. And that got to be pretty debauched. I don't remember for sure if we had seen Beer Store Dude the night before, but we got to spend some time with him. A gentleman goes by the name Explore Vegas also joined us for a while. We started out the evening, as always, at Bar Canada, and then kind of made our way down towards Circa Plaza, that area. And a good time, and way too many cocktails. There is video, at least on the Pennies for Vegas vlog, of me singing I Want It That Way with our Uber driver as we headed back down to Planet Hollywood. And of course, I just couldn't leave good enough alone. Hung out for a while with Ashley and her husband, and we had kind of a little mini group poll that didn't go well. And I think they did decide to call it a night, but I just decided I'd hang out at casino bars until like 3:34 in the morning. Didn't lose as much money as I thought maybe I would, but I pretty much lost a day because I really didn't get around until afternoon on September the 7th. September 7th was, for me, kind of an abbreviated day, and it probably needed to be. It probably wasn't as abbreviated as it needed to be, actually. I finally did decide I would kind of make my way across the street and down the strip a little ways. Went to Cosmo, Aria, Park MGM, New York, and just kind of ran out of gas already, so I ended up taking an Uber back to Planet Hollywood and just kind of chilling for a couple of hours. We had decided the night before that we would all hit up this Legends Divas show at Tropicana. And inadvertently, I ran into pretty much the entire crew downstairs at Planet Hollywood grabbing a slice of pizza. Again, I'll reiterate, staying at Planet Hollywood, there's a lot of inexpensive eateries around there, and reasonably priced eateries at least. Got myself another slice of pinup pizza. We finally made our way down to Tropicana. Place is kind of bleak, not looking so good. Not really a fun joint. The show was pretty good. It was confusing figuring out how to get in and out of there. In the end, though, they seated us in the front row. And again, the ladies, or I don't know, whatever. They were pretty good. But I was pretty much toasted at that point, or maybe at least just kind of out of the mood to socialize. We did walk over to New York briefly, to Tom's Urban. I sat there for a few minutes, wanted to pay my respects to Tom and Mindy, who I, as usual, did not spend as much time with on this trip as I might have liked. And made what turned out to be like a really long walk back to Planet Hollywood. It doesn't look like it should be that far, and I probably made it farther than it was. But went up to the room, thought I was going to call it a night, did the video that you all saw a day or two ago. Then, I got to go down and play a little bit more. That was a mistake. I needed to be at the airport at 6 a.m., and I basically didn't go to sleep till around 2 a.m., so I slept about an hour and a half. And that's what led to the very short, very long day, I guess I should say, yesterday, and the lack of sleep. But thankfully, I'm home now. and back in my world, and excited about the adventures ahead of me over the next few months. And I'm not really sure when I'm going to get back to Las Vegas, and not really sure what the content that we're going to create when we go back there will be. But I hope that you'll continue to follow along on Vegas Weekly and on the Vegas Tips and Tricks channel, and we'll let you know what's ahead. Until then, I hope you have a great, lucky, and healthy week. We'll see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.